Well, hello, and welcome to this episode of Unfair Advantage, where we explore the strategies, insights, and methodologies to give you an unfair advantage. I'm your host, Mona Hilton, CEO of Advantage Anywhere, and we are so proud to bring you topics and guests that will stretch your mind and grow your business. Now, if you've missed any of the amazing episodes of Unfair Advantage, or maybe you just want to binge watch on topics that will actually improve your business and your life, check out the Unfair Advantage recordings at www.unfairadvantage.com/videos. And be sure to subscribe to our ever-growing YouTube channel for the very latest in information and tips and news on the hottest topics and leadership issues. Now, there are a lot of influencers out there right now talking about reimagining senior living. But what exactly does that mean? The truth is, it probably depends on who you're listening to. And if you're like me, you're getting a lot of confused messages and maybe a little confused by the different viewpoints. Today, you're in the right place because today's special guest is Rob Love. Rob is the president and CEO of Love & Company. It's a firm that specializes in providing marketing, research, branding, lead generation, and sales services for senior living organizations. Rob leads Love & Company's work in supporting clients with strategic planning, redevelopment projects that help their communities plan effectively for the future. Now, Rob and I have been running in the same circles for about the last 13 years that I've been involved in senior living, but only recently did I have the pleasure of getting to know Rob directly. And I am really excited to introduce you to Rob. He really impressed me with his unique perspective on branding and reimagining senior living. And I'm telling you right now, it might not be what you think it is. So I'm really looking forward to having this conversation with Rob. I believe that you're going to be inspired and you might even be challenged as to how you think about reimagining senior living. Rob, welcome to the Unfair Advantage.
Thank you, Mona. It's really an honor to be invited to share my thoughts with you today. Thank you very much.
Oh, I'm so excited about this, Rob. Thank you for being on here. I'll tell you what, for those people who don't already know you or don't know you yet, would you start by giving people a little bit of history about you and how you got here to this point today?
Sure. Our company has been around for more than 40 years now. I've been part of it. I actually just recently passed my 34th anniversary with the firm, believe it or not. And I've been the owner of Love & Company for about 25 years. We've been working in the senior living field for 30 years now. And for about the last 25, senior living is all that we do. That is, our focus is to help senior living communities succeed. And by that, help the seniors in our country live a better life, which is very much going to be the theme of our conversation today. Love & Company, for those that may not know, you kind of listed the services earlier, but we kind of see ourselves as offering four major areas of services. One is what we call our strategic services, and those are things like market demand analyses, competitive studies, pricing analyses, working with development teams, working with master planning teams. Really, we kind of represent the consumer in that process to ensure that development plans are in line with what the market's looking for. We also offer marketing services, all the planning and strategy. If your community is at point A today and wants to get to point B in the future, what's it going to take to get there? The third area is all the creative, the brand development, lead generation. How do we get people to raise their hands and say, hey, I'm interested in learning more about your community? And the fourth major area is sales, sales consulting, sales coaching, mentoring. And the reason I walk through all four of those is the interconnectedness of them is what I really think gives us, I'm not sure I'd want to say an unfair advantage in the field, but
It's okay.
An advantage, because I think we're the only firm out there that is both strong on that strategic insights, market study, competitive analysis side, master planning side, and the sales side. So we're able to take what we learn from working with consumers, boots on the ground, day in, day out on what they want, and bring that back to our development teams, our master planning teams, to really ensure that the projects that are being planned truly are in sync with what the market's looking for.
Wow, that's really good, Rob. I picked up on a couple of threads, if you will, of things that we're going to be talking about today.
Yep.
I heard you say, and I'm paraphrasing, but I heard you say that you were consumer centric, what they're looking for, what they want, and that's so important. And then, of course, looking at communities for tomorrow. And I'm looking forward to having that discussion with you about that. Now, as I mentioned before, there are a lot of people talking about reimagining senior living. And again, it all depends on their perspective. But what do you mean when you say it's time to reimagine your brand? Tell us a little bit about your thinking process there.
Sure. So, the senior living world certainly has been changing rapidly for many years now, particularly fueled by a lot of changes, surrounding COVID and so forth. And it's just going to keep changing in the years to come. Everybody out there listening to us today knows that there's just tremendous potential growth and demand as the boomers reach 75, 80, 85 for our communities. And so the question is, how do we really, do we as a field really understand what that market is looking for in a way that we are reinventing and reimagining what we offer to be able to meet the needs of today's and tomorrow's consumers? So when I say it's time to reimagine your brand, I'm not talking about logos and websites and brochures. Really, your brand is everything about the community, everything you offer, all the experiences. It's your residences, it's your amenities, it's your services. It's the experience of living in your community. That's your brand. And is that experience in line with the expectations of consumers, not just of today, but consumers of tomorrow? And in many cases, our communities aren't. So to reimagine your brand, we need to step back and take a fresh look at our communities and what we're offering. And is that really in alignment with what the market's looking for? And there are many, many communities out there that really need to transform from the community of yesterday to the community of tomorrow.
I totally agree with that, Rob. I've said this before in the past, but I think a lot of it is about the consumer's perception as well. My mom is 91 years old. She just moved into senior living. And her initial reason for not wanting to go in is she didn't want to be with those old people. So
Exactly.
even if they are young or not, their perception is that they don't want that whole way of living or thinking in terms of it that way. So looking at it from the consumer perspective is so important. Now, you mentioned the community of tomorrow. What does that look like? How is the consumer changing? What are the implications to our communities from your perspective?
Sure. So let's start with the how's the consumer changing part of that, because that's really what frames where a community of tomorrow needs to go. And I remember, earlier in my time in the field, 20 some years ago, I was going to all the conferences, leading age and so forth. And there are all these presentations about the silent generation is coming. How do we prepare for them? What are their needs? And that led to a lot of really positive change in the field. We knew about the silence, more interested in things like health and wellness and in choice and flexibility and so forth. But now that the boomers are here, they're like the silent generation on steroids. And I hate to ever just, try and stereotype any group of people, because boomers represent such a diverse group of people. But there are some commonalities between what a very high proportion of the boomers are interested in and with what society as a whole is interested in. And this is different than previous generations we've served. And very much more focused on health and wellness than previous generations, to a much greater degree. Staying healthy and strong as long as possible is really important to them. Connection is really important, social connection, technological connection. And it's much more than connecting with other people just like you in the community. It's being part of the world, being part of intergenerational communities, having a broad, connection with the greater community around you. Certainly, choice and flexibility continues to grow in importance. The overall theme that people are looking for is, tell me about how you're going to meet my needs as a community. Don't tell me how I can fit into your community. Tell me how you can meet my needs and help me be who I want to be. And that leads to the last big change, is a sense of empowerment. This next generation, the consumer of tomorrow, wants to be empowered to live the life that they want to live. And this is really not something to be taken lightly at all, this idea of empowerment. And the communities that are moving in this direction already are really highly successful. We did a survey a couple of years ago of people who were on lead bases of multiple communities. So by lead base, these are people who have already expressed an interest in moving to one of our communities. And 85% of them, just think of that number, 85% said that they wanted a plan for the next 10 years. Think about that time frame. That's how they're thinking. That would enable them to learn, teach, grow, and contribute. And think about those words: learn, teach, grow, contribute. If you're familiar with Maslow's hierarchy, which is the system of human needs for which we basically need to meet each level of need before we move on to the next one. Well, senior living for years really is focused on meeting some of the lower levels of Maslow's hierarchy: safety and security. It's our whole healthcare message. Come, you won't have to move again. If anything happens to your health, we'll be able to take care of you in the future. Care is just not as good a word, in today's market as it was 10 and 15 years ago. Empowerment is so much more important than care. The life plan of community of yesterday really was a continuing care retirement community. That's your story about your mom, 91, not wanting to be with, I would say, those old people. What she meant by that was those people that need so much more care. I'm vital, I'm active, I'm not ready to be sedentary. And that's the perception that our communities have fought for so long. And it's just even getting greater. So the life plan of community of tomorrow, to change those minds and change those perceptions, needs to be communities that are all about empowerment and engaging the residents to really be able to live the life they want to live. And there's a really cool story that I think brings this idea to life. A client of ours from a couple of years ago called The Overlook, in a small town called Charlton, Massachusetts. They were able to get someone to move into their community. His name is Steve Dragon, and he was a lifelong brewer. He got them to agree to install a brewing system in the community. Who does that? I asked that question, at lots of conferences. How many of you have installed a brewing system for your residents? No hands go up. Once. Someone talked about putting in, I don't even know the right terminology, but to be able to make wine. But that's been it. This brewing system, it's much more than just this guy, Steve Dragon, being able to continue his passion, and it very much was his passion. It was his way to extend that passion to the rest of the community and get people involved with it. So now, as you show here on screen, the Overlook has the Brew Crew. Dozens of residents get together to help brew and plan the different beers, and they've actually launched a product line called, drum roll, Senior Moment. So you can go to this community and definitely have a senior moment while you're there. And you can see by the labels. And thank you, Mona, you get all the credit for finding these and pulling these up there. But so many different beers that they've brewed, and they brew award-winning beers. And this is just a great sense of community, of belonging, of achieving something. And for Steve Dragon, of leading something. That's a story of empowerment. That's a story of self-actualization at the top of Maslow's hierarchy. And the Overlook, being willing to do this, that shows a very different sense of operationally how our communities need to operate, in today's market. And it's all what I was saying about, we can't say, here, come join us and you can do these things that we offer. It needs to be about, how can we help you live the life you want to live?
I love that story, Rob. That is one of the coolest stories I've heard in the industry. And it's so true. And, you had told me this story before. That's why I got these, looked for these graphics. But as you were telling the story just now, I remember something that just happened with my mom this weekend. I was talking to her, and, obviously she's older, but she used to be a teacher. That was her career all of her life, is she was a college teacher. And she was telling me this weekend that she was asked at this new senior living community, now that she's been there about 6 weeks, to teach a class. And I'm telling you,
Yep.
she lit up like a Christmas tree as she's telling me about it. They're valuing her gifts, is how she sees it. And
Yep.
she's able to give back and keep that alive. And even though her memory is starting to slip, it's as if everything came back to her. This is a story that not only is it cool, but it's a game changer for the seniors who do want to contribute. Thank you for
Absolutely.
that story. That's awesome.
Oh, and
And
that's
it's,
great that your mom's getting to teach. That's
I
amazing.
know, she's so excited too. You should see her. And I'm so glad that there is, change happening in the industry, but I know that there's also some things that we're doing right as an industry. What would you say are some of the things that we're doing right? Perhaps some of the opportunities you see. What are you seeing there?
Sure. Well, the things that I see the field doing right, it sort of dovetails off what we've been talking about. There are a lot of communities that are and have been really working hard to reposition themselves, to meet the needs of tomorrow's residents. And this is coming through in a lot of different ways. They're fixing their inventory. I mean, if a community has a ton of 650 square foot, one bedroom, one bath residents, that's not going to fly in the future. So are they combining? Are they taking down old buildings? Things like that. There are a lot of communities that are being very proactive on upgrading the inventory to what today's prospect wants. Also, as I'm sure you and everyone here knows, there's a lot of downsizing of healthcare. Healthcare, two sides. One, it doesn't generate much of a margin for our communities, but really people want to live in their homes as long as they possibly can. So we have communities becoming much more progressive in offering in-home care, in-home assistance to enable people to stay there as long as possible, which can reduce the need for skilled nursing, reduce the need for assisted living. Unfortunately, not reducing the need for memory care so much, but because that's continues to be a big thing. And there are communities that are truly investing in the health and wellness experience. We'll share an example of that. I think we'll talk about that in a little bit. So there are a lot of things like this that communities are being proactive, are looking to the future. Many of them are. Also, a lot of communities that are looking to serve non-residents, whether it's continuing care at home,
Yes.
another name that could use being reimagined, or communities with early advantage or early acceptance programs, really unique ways of attracting and enticing a broader market. There are so many good things that we have very many innovative thinkers out there. If you think about what we're not doing, it's really all those same things reversed. Communities that have been successful for years, they have very strong balance sheets, but they've not reinvested in themselves. They've not done these things that we just talked about to work on reinventing, and census is dropping. They're struggling to rebuild after COVID, and those finances are starting to be chipped away at, which is going to leave them in a vulnerable position if they don't really look to reinvent themselves. And speaking of reinventing, that's really where we get to the opportunity. And I talked early, just briefly saying, our environment, senior living field is changing, and will continue to change more than it ever has before. It's so much more competitive than it's ever been. And not just because there are more life plan communities. There's been such tremendous growth in rental independent living that truly is head-to-head competition for a lot of entrance fee communities today. But even more than that, so many organizations, companies are targeting seniors in their homes, home care, home health, any variety of services designed to enable people to live at home as long as possible. In fact, now, if you think 10 years ago, a lot of our basic life plan community marketing, we will do meals, we do housekeeping, you don't have to worry about home maintenance, we've got transportation for you if you need it. You can, well, the picture isn't showing up very well, but there, if I hold it there, I think it shows up. Yeah, you can get all of those things on a touch of a button on your phone today.
Yes.
So there's so many alternatives. Uber is competition for us. DoorDash is competition for us. So in such a competitive environment, the question for communities is how can they really differentiate themselves in a meaningful way that will create a value for them that's truly meaningful to a prospect and will make them want to move to our communities. And I believe that opportunity is all around the health and wellness, and not just physical fitness in a fitness center, but truly a holistic approach to keeping people well and active and engaged as long as they possibly can. Think about the services, particularly full life plan communities, already have. We have medical services, to be able to provide healthcare to people. We have the fitness and, the strength training and the movement training and all those things to keep people fit and active and mobile. We have all the dining programs and the ability to meet the needs of people if they're vegan, vegetarian, gluten-free, specialized diets, just generally encouraging them to eat healthy and eat right. And we've got certainly that social connection and engagement. Those are the four primary pillars of health and wellness. And unlike any other competitive option out there, we have the ability to bring those things together and offer them in one unique package that truly enables people to live their best lives. What we don't have is the technology to get what happens in the medical side of things with what happens in fitness and what happens in dining and nutrition and what happens in social connection, to get all that information together into one holistic picture, one health file, to which everybody understands, the physical fitness team understands what the medical team is working on and vice versa, because it's all there together. That's an opportunity for us to build that and be able to deliver that. And, a guest you had on not too long ago, a good friend of mine, Tom Mann of Mooring Spark, they are one of the most innovative organizations in our field. And I know Tom and their team have really been working on this more so than anybody else I'm aware of, to create this integration between these various facets of things. But it's definitely an opportunity for our field as a whole.
I think you're so right. That's very holistic. And I've toured those communities. Obviously, they're a client as well. And it is outstanding. And you have to ask yourself, why isn't everyone doing this?
Yep. And that takes us right back to our overall theme. It's time to reimagine your brand. It's time to move away. There are still a lot of communities out there that, as much as I don't like the word, truly are still continuing care retirement communities. They are not life plan communities. And it's time to make that transition. It's time to become the community of tomorrow. And that's a life plan community that's about empowerment and not care. Sorry, that's my soapbox.
No, I think that's great. So I'm wondering, so how do you take a community? How do you make that transition to more of a life plan model? How do you move a community from the community of yesteryear to the community of tomorrow?
Well, like anything, it's a great question. Like anything, it's a process. You don't just flip a switch. We talked about the overlook, which is very much a philosophical change in how to operate a community. A lot of it is thinking different. It's board education, it's management education, it's getting people on the same page about what the goals are for tomorrow. But one of the things that's really going to be an opportunity and is an opportunity for us as the number of boomers that move into appropriate age range for our communities grows and grows and grows, we have so much opportunity to create niche communities or niche communities, depending on how you prefer to say it, where instead of being sort of a generic life plan community, yes, we offer very similar things as everybody else, we can be a more unique community. Maybe we have a special focus on health and wellness. Maybe like Enso Village in California, it's a Zen community. Maybe like LaSalle Village in, just outside of Boston. It's a very strong education focused, lifelong learning focused on the campus of a university. There's so many more opportunities to really focus on a distinct niche. But to figure out that right niche, there's several basic planning steps. Understand your market and what's the market depth and what's the opportunity to grow. Where are there any untapped parts of the market that may create more opportunities for growth? Where's your competition going? Do you want to go in the same direction they are, or is there an opportunity to go in a different direction? What are your strengths or weaknesses compared to that competitive market? What are the consumers in your market looking for? You don't just want to start down a path without thinking clearly through what are all the environmental factors affecting your community that may lay out, and indicate what that best path is for you to go forward. So those are really the steps. A lot of market analysis and competitive analysis and understanding that consumer. From there, leadership and the board can really start to make the right decisions about how to evolve the community.
So those are a lot of great ideas, Rob, but sometimes it helps to kind of see it from the perspective of a case study or an example. Can you share with us a little bit about maybe an example of community that's actually made that transition successfully and what that looked like?
Absolutely, would love to. It's one of my favorite stories to tell.
Good.
John Knox Village in Pompano Beach, Florida. We started working with them back in 2008, so 15 years ago. And at that point in time, they were struggling. Their census was in the low 80s. A lot of the product that they offered was really old. It was just really, talk about the community of yesterday. They were the community of yesteryear. I love John Knox Village. I love the team down there. The team down there now is not the team that was down there in 2008. I can say, in 2008, they would have been a really nice community for 1988. They were already 20 years, behind the curve of keeping up. It's just kind of like we said in that example. They had a really strong balance sheet, great reputation, rested on their laurels, didn't reinvest, and fell behind the needs of the market. And census just kept dropping and dropping, and the financials kept dropping and dropping. So they really needed to reinvent. But to be candid, the board and management that were there when we started, they had been there so long and saw the strong balance sheet, and it must be about marketing, it must be about sales, and it was hard to educate them. And in fact, I would say we never were really totally successful in that. It took a change in the CEO level and a change in the board chair and the board makeup, and then educating the board to really get the agreement and buy-in that they needed to reinvent themselves for the future. And they started in maybe closer to 10 years ago, and with some facets of improvement, then some major master planning more like 7 years ago, where we were part of helping plan what things should be. And since then, they've just done an amazing job of transforming this old dated campus, an outside pool. This is in Fort Lauderdale, where it bakes in the middle of summer, to a really just amazing aquatic complex with shade and a little bar area beside it. They've gone from one dining hall, if you will, cafeteria style, talk about 1988 style, to now like 7 different venues that are just all exceptional in their own different ways and their offerings. The fitness and wellness as a whole have totally reinvented that over the years. And in fact, they were rated number 2 in the country in 2022 by the New Step Beacon, International Council on Active Aging Award, for the best health and wellness programs, in the country. Done an amazing job there. They're building 2 brand new towers of 140 residences that are designed really to meet today's market, and those are sold extremely well. They worked really hard to get rid of a lot of that old and smaller inventory. So they've literally transformed every facet of the community, or are transforming it. There's still a lot of older inventory in pockets, and there's a 15-year plan to eventually keep going through and remake every part of that campus, with upgraded, current, to meet current market expectations. And not surprisingly, not only has this expansion been successful, the existing communities have gone from the low 80s to the mid 90s in census. They even have this is a big community, by the way. I didn't say that, but there were more than 600 independent living residences. And now they're adding 140 more. And they have this amazing cultural arts center, performers coming in from all over. It's not just for residents, people come from the community in to enjoy the outside community to enjoy things. Just done an amazing job of transforming that community. So kudos to the leadership team at that community for what they've been able to do.
Wow, that's such a great success story. But it's one thing to step back in 2023 and go, that was well worth all the effort and the changes that had to be made. As we all know, for all of us, change is scary, especially when it's a change to the unknown and you don't know, you don't have a guarantee that it's going to turn out that good. Nothing is going to change until we change something. So I love that story. Hopefully that gives everyone hope that things do get better, will get better if you have the courage to make the change. I love all those stories, Rob. Thank you for sharing them. I know that we've talked about a lot of things today. You've been like a wealth of wisdom, a lot of great ideas. I hope everybody is making note of all these ideas. If there was one takeaway or one thing you want to make sure that people take away from this conversation today, what would you want that to be? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think it's something I've basically touched on at several points throughout. And that's that things are changing and they're going to continue to change. Communities cannot rest on their laurels. They may have a strong balance sheet now, but unless they really reinvent and look at who they need to be tomorrow, they really risk becoming irrelevant in another 10 years. There's the expectations of the market are changing dramatically, and we have to change to keep up with that. Cannot rest on our laurels.
Yes. And unfortunately, sometimes if they wait too long, it's too late. So it's something that you have to proactively always look forward towards. Well, Rob, thank you so much. That was amazing. I really appreciate you sharing all of your ideas. That was awesome. You did a great job. I'm so glad that I got to know you. Look forward to working with you in the future. For those of you who would like to reach out to Rob, his contact information is on the screen right now. You can email him, you can call him, whatever works best for you. I know that Rob is very generous with his information and wisdom, as you can tell, and he'd be happy to talk to you. He loves conversations. So feel free to reach out to Rob. I encourage you to do that and share with him a little bit about your situation and see if it's something that he can help you with or guide you on. And of course, if you would like to reach me for any reason or would have a potential guest for Unfair Advantage, or if you'd like to learn more about Advantage Anywhere, which is sales and marketing automation for senior living, to help get more move-ins faster, easier, and with less runaround, feel free to reach out to me. My contact information is on the screen as well. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today for this episode of Unfair Advantage. It's time to reimagine your senior living brand. Thank you, and Stay tuned for the next upcoming episode of Unfair Advantage. Have a great day.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.